Bienvenidos al canal de YouTube del Instituto Cervantes de Manchester y Leeds. Es un inmenso honor pues contar esta noche con el profesor Julio Villagarcía y con Kim Potowski en la primera conferencia en la que vamos a tratar del bilingüismo en sus diferentes aspectos, pero siempre con la perspectiva y la óptica de que el conocimiento de varios idiomas es siempre una riqueza y algo que nos enriquece no solamente en el aspecto intelectual, sino sobre todo en el aspecto humano. Good evening, welcome to the YouTube channel of the Instituto Cervantes Manchester and Leeds. Today we begin our series of bilingualism, which we have designed with the support and coordination of Professor Julio Villagarcía of the University of Manchester, whose field of research is focused on the subject, and who will be in charge of introducing Professor Kim Potowski, a world authority on bilingualism. Thank you very much to both for being there and accepting our invitation. It is an honor for our institution to count on your presence in a program that is truly strategic importance in our programming. Bilingualism and multilingualism, despite being the predominant reality in most countries, is a subject that has been widely studied by the academic community, but is not well known to the general public. Over the years, popular knowledge has internalized a series of ideas that have predominated in the academic community, some of which it's commonly believed, for example, that simultaneous acquisition of two languages creates problems. It is thought that children's developing brains do not work well, that confusion is created, that acquisition is delayed, and at the end, learning is neither of both languages well. So many biased ideas and so many confusion. And that is the aim of this series. This program, we want to analyze the reality of bilingualism from an eminently practical point of view in order to answer to questions that arise on a daily basis in the teaching and the education of bilingual children. Language is one of the fundamental elements of our identity. It allows us to see the world in a certain way, knowing that when we share a language, we have a treasure that unites us but does not tie us together, as Gabriela Mistral said, reference to a Spanish language. The series will show that bilingualism, far from being a limitation for the process of intellectual development for children, is an enormous advantage, and it makes us more flexible, develops attention and concentration, and above all, allows the coexistence and preservation of cultural diversity and richness of our society. In this series, we will have different approaches and from people from different universities and countries, and we have been confirmed the participation from Professor Kim Potowski. We will have Yaron Matras, Antonella Sorache, Kai González Villazo, and Carmen Parafrita Couto. And now I'll introduce Professor Villagarcía. Professor Villagarcía is currently a senior lecturer in Spanish linguistics and syntax in the Department of Linguistic and English Language at the University of Manchester. Dr. Villagarcía, in the course of his PhD at the University of Connecticut, was trained as a theoretical syntactician and as a language acquisitionist, working with the framework of minimalism. His current interest lie in the areas of Spanish Romance and English linguistics. Other interests include child language acquisition, bilingualism, and the application of theoretical linguistics research to foreign second language pedagogy. His book, Lingüística para la Vida, Linguistics for Life, targeting a wide audience, will be published in 2021. So thank you very much. Muchas gracias, Kim. Muchas gracias, Julio. Tienes la palabra y bienvenidos todos. Es un gran honor tener a todos ustedes participando de esta conferencia. Al final de la misma, obviamente, habrá un turno de preguntas y espero que participen y que podamos entre todos saber más de este tema tan apasionante como es el bilingüismo, señalando e insistiendo en la idea como una riqueza y no como una desventaja. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Pedro. Muchas gracias a todos y a todas por estar aquí. Muchas gracias, Kim. I'm Julio Villagarcía from the University of Manchester, and it's a great honor for me to introduce Professor Kim Potowski, who will be delivering the lecture No Child Left Monolingual, the first talk of the Bilingualism series of the Instituto Cervantes of Manchester and Leeds, as the director has just mentioned. And by the way, you know you're getting old when this is not the first time that you have this privilege. I actually already had the honor of introducing Professor Potowski back in Philadelphia 6 years ago. We live in an extremely diverse world, but unfortunately, monolingualism continues to be widely regarded as the norm. It is our hope that the Bilingualism series of the Instituto Cervantes will help debunk many of the myths surrounding multilingualism. It is therefore our duty to promote multilingualism by discussing the numerous benefits that speaking more than one language has for individuals and for society at large. Today, we are lucky to have with us one of the most prominent researchers in the realm of multilingualism in the United States of America and across the globe, and certainly a firm believer that monolingualism can be cured. Kim Potowski is full professor of Spanish linguistics in the Department of Hispanic and Italian Studies at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Kim Potowski received her PhD from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in 2002. Her research focuses on bilingual immersion schools, the teaching of heritage speakers, and the challenges faced by US-raised Mexican youth when incorporating into Mexican schools. She's the author, co-author, or editor of 13 books, some of which are currently in progress, as well as numerous peer-reviewed journal articles, book chapters, and encyclopedia entries. She has presented widely and is the founding director of the Language in Context Research Group at Illinois, Chicago. Needless to say, she's deeply committed to outreach and knowledge transfer beyond academia. Professor Potowski has taught courses on Spanish in the United States, teaching Spanish to heritage speakers, language policy and cultural identity, alongside bilingualism, to mention just a few. As mentioned by the director, at the end of today's presentation, you will be able to ask Professor Potowski questions through the chat or by unmuting your microphone. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Potowski. Many thanks for being here, Kim. Many thanks to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Julio. I'm going to share my screen. Boom. Can we all see that? Can I get a thumbs up? Let me know that y'all can see that. ¿Alguien me quiere señalar que lo puede ver? Sí? Okay, yes. Perfecto. Great. Thank you so much. So great. Thank you, Julio. It's great to be here with virtually with you all here today. Whoever designed this flyer deserves a big thumbs up. It's gorgeous. I want to thank Pedro Jesus for inviting me here to be the inaugural speaker of what I think is a fantastic series. We were chatting earlier about how, you know, the Cervantes, your charter, your job obviously is to disseminate, discuss, promote, right, the Spanish language around the world. I think this is a marvelous step to be even more inclusive about multilingualism more generally. I will be focusing to some degree on Spanish, but certainly all languages, as you will see, form part of the mission. As Julio just mentioned, I'd like to thank him as well as Carlos and everybody else who was involved in this great series. So we're going to start with a question. I'm going to go really, really broadly, and I'm going to ask you, how many people are there in the world? How many human beings? You can go ahead and type in the chat. I can't see the chat while I'm in presenter mode with your beautiful faces on the side. So I'm just going to ask Julio, if you could please shout out the first 5 answers that people write. How many human beings are there on the planet? Just take a guess. Back of the envelope.
7 billion, 7+ billion and growing, 11 billion.
Okay. All righty.
Billion.
Great. Thank you, Julio. All right. So I just looked at the worldometer a little while ago, and this was the number I got. So in the United States, we call this 7.8 billion. I'm told that some other countries would call this mil millones, thousand millions. But you can see the cifra, you can see the number. Para que no haya confusiones. This is how many people approximately are running around the planet. Okay, next question. What % of them do you think around the planet overall are bilingual or multilingual? Julio, will you please tell me the first 5 replies that are written?
80%, 35%, 75%, 90%, 60%, 57%.
Wow, 57. That person watches The Price is Right and doesn't want to go, wants to get close and not go over. The answer to this question is we don't know. Okay, but we know that folks like Francois Grosjean and others have dedicated their life to answering this question. He estimates it's between 50 to 70. Okay, so if we wanted to be conservative, we would use the number 60. Right, that's the number we're going to use. 60% of the population of the world is bilingual or multilingual. Okay, now I've mentioned that a lot of my work is going to focus on the United States. Where I can, I will try to ask you to extrapolate, or I'll bring what little bit of data I've been able to find about the UK. But here I'm going to talk about the United States. What % of the United States do you think is bilingual? Okay, I'm going to ask you now to raise your hands. Okay, I can't see them, but that's okay. I believe you that you're raising your hand, and I will feel the energy when you're raising your hands. Okay, ready? If you think 0 to 25% of the United States is bilingual, go ahead and raise your hands. Okay, put them down. Do you think it is 26 to 50% of the United States? Raise your hands. Actually, you can raise your, there you go, Deborah Sanchez, thank you. You can put your little hand in the thing. You can do that if you'd like to. Okay, so thank you, Deborah. I assume you chose 26 to 50. Okay, who thinks, Nuria también, thank you, Nuria. Who thinks the United States is probably, you know, like the rest of the world, right? We have to be 51 to 75% bilingual people in the United States. Raise your, okay, I see a lot of hands there. Miguel, Eva, Kate, Jael. Okay, great. Hands down. How many of you think the United States is really, really bilingual? 76 to 100% of the United States is bilingual. Raise your hands. Okay, monkey time. I don't know if you're raising it for 51 or for 76, but that's okay. The truth is, once again, we don't know. Yo vine aquí para decir puras cosas que no se saben. No, what we do have is the American Community Survey. And the last time that was carried out in 2017, now note, it does not ask, are you bilingual? It asks, do you speak a language other than English at home? Okay, you may speak a language other than English, but not speak it at home. Entonces esta pregunta no captó tu bilingüismo, ¿cierto? Also, the second part of this question, well, the third part of this question says, how well do you speak English? Now, you may say, I speak Korean, but I don't speak it at home, and I don't speak any English at all. But you could still be bilingual, couldn't you? Perhaps you speak Korean and Arabic, right? So we do not have in the United States a precise way to measure our degree of bilingualism. This is all we got, okay? It's all we got. And the last time they did this, drum roll please, it was 21.6%, okay? So no cheating. Who got that question correct? Who said 0 to 25? If you said 0 to 25, you were correct. But guess what? We are not going to applaud you. We are not going to be happy, okay? Because I think this is bad news. I am not happy that you got this right and that this is the state of affairs, okay? I did a little homework. United Kingdom, y'all are doing a little better than we are. What I was able to see was that 38% of UK citizens report that they can speak, right, well enough to have a conversation, at least another language, okay? So kudos to you, but we seem to have inherited your attitudes towards English and towards monolingualism here in this country. Oh, P.S. If you are interested in a study of Spanish around the UK, I highly recommend this piece by Martín Guardado. And if you contact me later, or maybe I'll just send it to Julio and then you can write to him to get a copy. Anyway, so if we're to use as a metaphor for languages, a bicycle and a unicycle, okay? Check out this thing on the left. You got the United States and you've got 80% of us riding around on a unicycle, one language, right? Only 20% of this country has a bicycle, 2 languages, right? Whereas the rest of the world, 60% of the planet is bilingual, right? Gets around on a bicycle, and only 40% is trying to get around on just one language, right? Okay. I am going to come at my talk through the angles of school children, okay? And two particular kinds of school children. There are school children who show up to school, like Joaquin here on the left. We call them heritage speakers. He is a heritage Spanish speaker. He could be a heritage Chinese, heritage Polish, heritage Arabic, whatever. A child who shows up to school speaking another language. Okay, that's one kind of child. The other kind of child that I will profile here to make my point is a child like Julian here, okay, who is an English monolingual. His family only speaks English at this time. His parents, his grandparents, etc. Okay. Now, children who arrive to school and who are still learning English, unfortunately, in this country, the policies are such that they either directly or indirectly basically erase the languages that the kids showed up with. And I'll come back to the processes involved in a moment. It's almost like a plant, right? If you don't water it, you know, se marchita, la planta que no se riega se muere. And that's kind of either through neglect or active processes, we seek to remove non-English languages from these children, okay? And here's part of the reason why. Remember we said 80% of the United States is monolingual in English. Well, guess what? They like it that way. They like it that way, and you see this kind of discourse all over the place, okay? We have multiple cases of what you would call linguistic bullying, okay? And this can range from the microaggression, right? That you're out in public and somebody gives you that stink eye, right? It can be a sign, it can be things like that, or actually we get plenty of macroaggressions, right? People who are assaulted in public, people right after 9/11, I remember folks were getting kicked off flights for speaking Arabic, all kinds of things. And I don't think that they have increased, to be honest, maybe slightly during the Trump years, but what has happened is that we have these now, and now people record this stuff and put it online. I actually have a website that I don't particularly enjoy maintaining at all. Whenever something makes its way to the news, I post it there, okay? Because sometimes people, I think they don't believe me or they don't want to believe me that these things happen. And they absolutely do. Okay, they happen all the time. We have, I won't go through all the cases, but you know, we had this lawyer in Manhattan who made the news not too long ago for yelling at these women who were working in the cafeteria. You know, they were speaking Spanish because that was their language, right? And P.S. a lot of times folks are hired because they speak Spanish and then they get in trouble for speaking Spanish. His law firm, if you looked at his website, it bragged about the fact that they were multilingual and had several languages, right? But then he went on this tirade, and he also equated, right, undocumentedness, right? So legal status with language. There's all kinds of terrible discourses going on. Now, you may know that the United States does not have an official national language. Nowhere does it say that English is our national language. Somebody tries to pass it every single year in Congress. It never goes through, okay? But we do have 31 states that have official English legislation. And what this does is it creates a climate of negativity, a climate of castigo, a climate of feeling that non-English languages are not wanted. And this helps accelerate intergenerational language shift, which, as the name implies, and you all are probably very familiar with, and here I use the example of a family from Oaxaca. Okay, so la señora aquí a la derecha llega a Estados Unidos de adulto, right? And she works, and maybe she learns English, maybe she doesn't learn English. What are some of the reasons why she might not learn English? Well, if you have ever tried to learn another language as an adult, you know it does not happen by osmosis. It does not happen just because you're here, okay? Y si la señora trabaja, you know, 10, 15 horas por día, cría sus hijos, right? And she's in a job where she doesn't have contact with English speakers, it's going to be difficult for her to learn English, okay? But anyway, vamos a decir que ella llega monolingüe en español. Okay, so nace la señora en medio, la hija de ella, okay? Nace, se cría aquí en Estados Unidos. Is she going to know English? Yes. Everyone who's born and raised in the United States is educated in English and they learn English, right? Here's my question. Will she know Spanish? Como es hija de inmigrantes, pues lo más probable es que sí, she will speak it, right? Sometimes it's very developed, sometimes it's less developed. If she's the first or the second child, her Spanish will typically be very strong. And remember, this is true for Arabic, Korean, Polish, right? Whatever the language, okay? Si es la tercera, la cuarta, la quinta, her Spanish will probably be less strong. And what are the reasons for that? Bueno, porque los hermanos mayores ya fueron al colegio, aprendieron algo de inglés, volvieron, and now the house is not a monolingual Spanish-speaking house anymore, right? So el orden de nacimiento tiene que ver. Did she spend every summer in Mexico con los primos? Eso también tiene que ver. Hay muchos factores aquí, okay? Now, nace la hija de ella, right? La que viene siendo la nieta de la señora que emigró. Born and raised in the United States, she will know English. Will she know Spanish? It is very likely that she will not know Spanish, o a lo mejor que lo comprende sin poderlo hablar, okay? And we'll come back to that a little bit later. So I just want you to see how fast this is, right? That we go from being monolingual to being bilingual to shifting again to monolingualism, okay? So these politicians who run around talking about, you know, immigrants need to learn English. I don't know where they're looking, because everywhere I look, I see loss, right? In fact, I have to figure out who it was. I read who it was who actually is credited with saying the following, that the United States is the graveyard for languages. Es donde vienen las lenguas para morirse, okay? And I know this isn't just for the United States. It's not unique. I know many countries have this issue. But if you think about what we sacrifice when we say, oh, this is fine, mira, pues es el precio de admisión, ni modo, ¿qué se va a hacer? You know, I think we can do a lot better. And if you think about a child who cannot communicate with her grandmother, right? I think that's tragic, and I think it's avoidable, okay? Not only are we getting this situation here, we are getting situations where parents cannot communicate with their own children. Sometimes, a veces tan rápido es el desplazamiento de la lengua de herencia, right? What else contributes? So we have these legal things that contribute. We have the scholastic things that contribute, which I'm going to come back to. We also have this sort of general discourse from professionals. Now, some of these professionals, I believe, are well-intended. I don't think that they're a bunch of racist, xenophobic jerks. Okay, some of them are well-intended, and they honestly believe that people should not speak Spanish, Greek, Polish. You know, don't speak it to your children anymore. Why would somebody give this advice? Okay, sometimes it's your hairdresser who gives this advice. They want, you know, what's best. Sometimes it's the child's teacher who really should know better. Sometimes it's the child's pediatrician. Y esto a mí me pudre, right? That a doctor would tell parents what to do linguistically. Porque miren, yo no ando por ahí dándote consejos gastrointestinales, right? I don't give advice about your carburetor either, right? Because I'm a linguist. That is not my area to give advice. Why do medical professionals feel en su derecho de dar estos consejos lingüísticos? You can tell I get very angry about this. I've had graduate students come to me que tienen hijos y me dicen, no, pues que la pediatra me dijo que dejara de hablar español con el nene. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I write them a letter, etc. But anyway, why might they give this advice? I think some of them give this advice because they're afraid that the children won't learn English as quickly, okay? We have evidence that shows that this is absolutely not the case, okay? In fact, there was a study in Boston with at least 100 families. Half of them, las mamás cambiaron al inglés pensando que iban a mejorar el inglés de sus hijos. La otra mitad de las mamás dijeron, Nel, en esta casa hablamos español, right? And they measured the children's English and Spanish. And guess what they found? Los niños cuyas mamás habían cambiado el inglés no tenían un inglés más fuerte. No sabían más palabras en inglés. Lo que sí era diferente era su español. Their Spanish was lower que el español de los niños cuyas mamás no habían cambiado al inglés. So, do you see what I'm saying here? They changed to English pensando que iban a mejorar el inglés de los niños y no lo mejoraron, and they threw their Spanish out the window, right? So, listen, if you want to speak English at home, please do, go right ahead. I'm not telling anybody what to do, what languages to speak in their homes. What I am saying is que nadie te diga que dejes de hablar tu lengua en casa, right? Do not believe that you are somehow harming your children or that their English acquisition will be slowed down, okay? Porque no es el caso, all right? They're afraid the kids will have an accent y tal, and that's absolutely not the case either. They are also, I think, afraid that the children will become confused, okay? Now, I'm going to test your memory. Do you remember at the beginning of this talk, we mentioned the percent of the planet that is bilingual, right? We said it was 60%. Tell me something. Do you think 60% of the planet is confused? Andan por ahí confundidos el 60% del planeta. Yo no creo. El 60% de hecho es la mayoría. And if you know basic mathematical terminology, right? De ahí viene la palabra normal, norma, la norma es lo que es más común. Entonces, es más común que el cerebro humano sea bilingüe o multilingüe, right? So that tells me that it's normal, que el cerebro bilingüe es normal, okay? And that for some reason, as Pablo alluded to at the beginning, we have elevated monolingualism as somehow better de alguna manera, cuando, first of all, it's not the majority of the planet. And second of all, vamos a ver evidencia de que no es lo mejor para el rendimiento cognitivo y académico. I think some people mistake for confusion, right? They think their kid is confused because their kid mixes languages, okay? If you don't already know this, it's absolutely normal for children to do this. Los lingüistas tenemos un término muy fancy que es code switching, okay? No es al azar para nada. There are patrones. Tú no cambias de lengua donde te dé la gana. There's certain constraints que rigen esta práctica lingüística. Y de hecho, you have to be strong in both languages para poderlo hacer. Si tu español es muy débil, no te vas a atrever, a cambiar de lenguas. And if your English is weak, tampoco. So I tell young people, porque a mí me llegan a la universidad, me dicen, ay, maestra, yo no hablo español, yo hablo Spanglish. Right? Como si fuera malo eso. Y les digo, you should be proud of that. You should absolutely be proud of that. ¿No? Arabic, Chinglish, these things are absolutely markers of a bilingual identity, and they're a sign of strong syntax, okay? Claro, vienes aquí a la uni para desarrollar tu español, y vamos a hablar de eso más adelante, para pulirlo, para agregar a tu repertorio comunicativo, eso sí, right? Para que sea formal, profesional, académico, para que tú puedas mantener una conversación monolingüe en caso de que sea necesario. Pero si no es necesario, go ahead and switch back and forth. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, okay? I like to bring up the example of my own children, okay? Yo practico lo que predico con los míos, que ahora son mucho más grandes que yo, pero cuando estaban chiquitos, me mezclaban de todo, and I used to write it down, porque a mí me fascinaba, right? El pequeño me decía, yo soy big boy, I don't want paint any más. Yo quiero mi own jugo, no quería compartir el jugo con el hermano. Y el grande también decía de todo. Una vez, bueno, ya ven que pasamos mucho tiempo diciéndoles a los niños, no grites, no grites, no grites. Pues en esta ocasión mi marido me gritó algo de un lado de la casa para la otra y el nene voltea y le dice, papi, don't greet, right? De no grites. Now, I understand that a normal parent, right, a non-linguist parent would freak out and would say, ay, Dios mío, pero ¿qué es lo que yo estoy haciendo a mi niño? I am ruining my child's brain, right? In part because we've been made to believe or just to think, right, that these things are somehow damaging. We have not been given enough evidence about how common this is and about how positive bilingualism is, and that all bilingual children do these things, okay? So when you don't know that, and then your kid says things like this, it's perfectly natural for you to say, oh, I better stop. But what all this work that I'm sharing with you and my message is encouraging you to do is to not worry about it, to keep moving forward. 60% of the planet does this. Bilinguals are not two monolinguals joined at the neck. That's absolutely not how it works, okay? You do not have un globo del español y un globo del inglés. Y si el globo del español es demasiado grande, el inglés no crece. No, that is not how it works, okay? All of the languages are there, juntos, pero no revueltos, and they support each other in a common underlying proficiency, okay? And if we return to my silly, analogy here, if you had to get from point A to point B, which of these vehicles would you pick? Which is the most stable? Which is the fastest? I think arguably, bilingualism is. And don't believe my bicycle metaphor. Look all over the popular media, which are constantly coming out with or publishing, reporting on studies that people are doing, that bilinguals, our brains are organized differently. We have cognitive benefits, social benefits. Nos vestimos mejor, somos más sexy, somos más funny. We get invited to more parties, okay? The average age of onset of Alzheimer's is actually delayed, an average of 4 years, sometimes as much as 10 years, okay? But yet, what are we doing? Aquí en Estados Unidos, con estos niños que nos llegan con un árabe tan lindo, con un polaco tan lindo, con un coreo tan lindo ahí naciente, right? La semilla. We either rip it out or we just don't water it, okay? And I feel like we could do a lot better. And P.S., there is a class piece here as well. And I have used this slide before, and como que it doesn't really land, but since y'all are in the UK, I feel like this is going to land pretty well. Si se acuerdan, cuando la princesita, you know, she's learning French, I believe, and everybody was bragging about how great that is. I think this reply that I saw on Twitter was quite remarkable. Most children of immigrants speak 2 languages, but nobody's running around bragging about it, right? And we can clearly see the reason why. So I would like us to keep this class-based element in view as well. Now, we're going to return to my friend Julian here. And these are real children, by the way. They were in my older son's class durante todo el colegio. This kid speaks English in his home. His parents speak English. Everything is only in English. Typically, in the United States, the first time that he will come into contact with another language, right, foreign language classes or modern language classes, it's going to be high school. And when you're in high school, a freshman in high school, you are 14. Okay, that is too late. Y además le dan 40, 50 minutos por día conjugando verbos, right? Yo voy, tú vas, ella va. You know, so that's why this is a problem, right? And los neurolinguistas nos dicen, when you learn a language earlier, okay, there's no magic sort of cutoff age, but before 8, 9, 10-ish, they have shown us that it se almacena en otra parte del cerebro, and they've called it organic memory, okay? So we know, for most intents and purposes, the younger, the better for learning languages, okay? It's like planting a seed, right? Cuando la tierra esté muy, muy fértil, right? But we don't do that. And we get this sentence right here, which I wonder if this sentence is also common in the UK. I studied 3 years of Spanish, French, German, lo que sea, Italiano, in high school, okay? How does this sentence end? And I don't remember anything, okay? Now, if this is true for you or someone you know, I am not wagging my finger in punishment at this person. It is not this person's fault, okay? It is the fault of a system que intentó sembrar una semilla en un desierto, right? It was, now, yes, there are some people who can learn languages durante toda la vida. Empiezan a los 15 o a los 35 o a los 130, and they learn languages very, very well. Pero son la excepción. Son la excepción. We really need to start much, much earlier. Now, in this country, we used to have 1/3 of our kindergarten through 5th grade, and I apologize, I'm using US terms. Maybe you guys call it form. But anyway, so kindergarten through about 10 years of age, 1/3 of them, 31%, were offering language education, okay? And then 6th grade through 8th grade, so that's about 11, 12, 13 years of age, it was 75%. Then came this educational act with George Bush called No Child Left Behind, okay? And it really decimated what little language programs we had, okay? And if we look at it today, actually 2015 was the most recent I could find. We ain't even tracking this, okay? So what you measure is what you care about. We're not even measuring it well enough for me to be able to tell you K8, K5, 6, 8, 9, 12 in 2021. I can't even tell you because the data is not out there, okay? But what I was able to find most recently was only 19%, okay? Now, sometimes I hear this, maybe you in the UK hear this as well. I don't need to learn another language. Most of the world speaks English, okay? And that is in part thanks to world domination of English and, you know, the empire. I just finished watching The Crown, okay? Yo tengo un poco más claro ahora why English is all over the planet, okay? But is this true, that most of the world speaks English? I looked it up, and I was kind of shocked. Julio, maybe you could tell me the first 5 responses you get. I want to know what you all think. What % of the world does not speak English? Are we getting any good answers there?
40%, 40%, 90%.
Wow.
70%, 30, 60, 50, about 50.
Wow, mucha variación ahí. Thank you, Julio. I did not find a source that I cite with absolute confidence, but I did find 2 sources that indicated that about 75% of this planet does not speak English. So if you're at a party, a backyard barbecue, and you hear somebody say, I don't need to learn another language, most of the world speaks English. That was my terrible imitation of a British accent, by the way. You can reply, no, that's not the case. So instead of this terrible No Child Left Behind Act, which decimated our language programs, What about this as a slogan? What about no child left monolingual? What if no child graduated from a United States high school, from a UK high school, monolingual in English? Wow, I think that's a much better way to approach things. That was the title of my TEDx talk that I gave several years ago. And I just looked it up a little while ago, and it has 96,000 views. And you know, I was pretty happy with that, because only 95,000 of those were my family and the students who I forced to watch it. So at least some people were watching it. So anyway, I have just outlined for you two problems, okay, in the United States. On the one hand, with our heritage speakers, our kids who show up speaking Gujarati, speaking Urdu, speaking Arabic, we either actively erase them or we neglect them. Okay, then they turn 14 and we're like, but now you can study. You know, really, what about all those years in between when we could have been developing formal language abilities, lectoescritura, how do you say it, literacy, right? Okay. And then with our English-speaking population, we begin our language education too late, and then we focus on yo voy, tú vas, ella va, which is just not the way to do it. There are not a lot of things in life that have a magic bullet, and this comes close. And that is called dual language education. It's a good solution for both of these problems. Now, in order to situate this, I'm going to spend a little bit of time very quickly telling you what we do in this country. When a child shows up to school and they are assessed, as they all are, for their English, if it is found that their English is not strong enough for them to participate successfully in the classroom, okay, and this is all, you know, measured in a particular way, by federal law, we must do something. We may not put a child like Joaquin here, whose English has been determined by a state assessment to not be strong enough to be successful in the mainstream classroom. We may not put him there and say, buena suerte, mijo, good luck, sink or swim. That is illegal. Okay, we must do something. There are three somethings that we can do. One of them is to provide a program that is entirely in English, but it does have a pull-out component, which is known as ESL. And you probably know that stands for English as a second language. Okay, another option is called bilingual. You will notice my quotes there. This is where 25% of the day is offered in Spanish, in Gujarati, in Polish, whatever the other language is. Okay, sort of as a crutch, just until third grade, hasta que el niño pueda más o menos ahí con el inglés, and then boom, lo botan del programa, okay? And they put him in mainstream English, okay? What happens to their Spanish afterwards? Nobody cares, nobody knows, nobody looks at it. Por eso es que yo digo que de bilingüe no tiene nada. De bilingüe no tiene nada este programa. Tiene, maybe as a tool, pero no como meta final, okay? And then the last model, the best one, is called dual immersion, two-way immersion. It has several names, okay? In these programs, 50 to 90% of the day is taught in this case, Spanish, okay? But it could be whatever the language. And it goes all the way up through 8th grade, sometimes even into high school, okay? And what's so wonderful, I think somebody has to mute their microphone. Somebody's having a party over there. We'll have a party afterwards. What's interesting about these programs is that it grows the Spanish in a robust way, okay? Not only is it for kids like Joaquin who need English support, it's also for kids like Julian, okay? Julian's parents signed him up for 50 to 90% of the day, right, in Spanish, okay? They decided we want to, as Julio said earlier, we want to cure our family's monolingualism, right? We don't want to wait till Julian's 14 years old para que le vengan con el yo voy, tú vas, ella va. We really want him to know Spanish. Y el pobre niño está en kinder y en primero y no entiende nada, right? 90% of the day is in Spanish, right? But they're all there learning from each other. Now, sometimes a school district will see the data that I'm about to show you, right? That dual language, this door number 3, right, is superior. And they implement the program. ¿Y quiénes son los papás que resisten? ¿Quiénes son los papás que se quejan y no quieren? No son los papás de Julian, son los papás de Joaquín. It is the immigrant parents, and se comprende, porque si ellos mismos han sufrido por su falta de inglés, lo último que quieren es que el hijo también sufra por una falta. Lo que quieren es que aprenda as much English as quickly as possible. Se entiende, right? So sometimes the school district me invita, o a veces no me invitan y me cuelgo por ahí con mis slides, right? Y les digo a los papás, a ver, de estos 3 programas, ¿cuál creen ustedes que va a resultar en el nivel de inglés más alto para sus hijos? Y todos y cada uno me contestan, no, pues el número 1, el programa 1, entre más inglés le hablan al niño, más inglés va a aprender el niño. Es lógico. Y yo respondo, sí, es lógico. Pero es cierto. Es cierto, hay que ver los datos. Vamos a Houston and we're going to look at 2 bars. Don't look at the red. El rojo no lo miren. I want you to look at the red and the blue and the yellow. The blue bar is going to show the English reading achievement of children who were in the transitional, el bilingüe que no es bilingüe que les dije, de la muleta, okay? And the yellow bar is going to show you the English reading of children who studied 50 to 90% of a day in Spanish. And look at this, who is reading better? Which bar is higher? Pues el amarillo. Do you see? Children who are taught the majority of the day in Spanish, when they are English learners, read better in English. How about writing? Same thing. How about math? Same thing. So you want your kids to learn more English? Pues me too. Put them in Spanish. And I know, yo sé que suena contraintuitivo. I get it, okay? Sometimes the answer that is correct is a little more complex, okay? La respuesta sencilla de entre más inglés le habla, más inglés va a aprender was simple, but it was not right. It was wrong, okay? P.S. These are public schools. These are not private fancy pants. You know, these are de la princesa, right? These are public schools, right? Si no me quieren creer esos datos, vámonos para California. They followed 3 groups of children, okay? Here is the achievement ya in 11th grade. So estos niños ya tienen 15, 16 años, okay? Y aquí abajo vemos los 3 programas que cursaron, right? So this here is the group que cursó el programa de puro inglés. And you can see que ya con 15, 16 años, they're only achieving at 11% on their English reading test. This is embarrassing. This is abominable. This is terrible. Okay, we are failing these children. Okay, here are the bilingual children. They're doing a little better. Los que pudieron gozar de unos cuantos años de 25% del día en español. Okay, where do you think the 2-way immersion children are going to be? Boom. This is what we call a no-brainer. Like, yo no entiendo, no comprendo a person, a school district, a society that does not do this. Why wouldn't you do this? Okay. Even children who have certain learning challenges, learning difficulties, right? Síndrome de Downs, lo que sea, they have what we call an IEP, an individualized educational program. Okay. They can and do well in these programs all over the place. Ahora, si lo volvemos a considerar, recuerden, dijimos que el 60% del planeta es bilingüe. Dentro de ese 60% está la distribución normal, que no sé cuál es, de individuos con problemas de aprendizaje, problemas de speech and hearing production, etc. Están ahí, right? No están excluidos de ese 60%. They're there. There are bilingual people with those conditions. So they absolutely can be in these programs. Y pues, si no quieren creer ni Houston ni California, pues no sé qué decirte. Peor el ciego el que no quiere ver, right? Because you go to Stanford, you go to North Carolina, El Paso, Portland, estudio tras estudio tras estudio demuestra lo mismo. These kids do better. They do better in English, they do better in math, they do better academically in their subjects. Now, we have to ask ourselves why. Why is this the case, okay? Part of the reason is que no se quedan atrasados, right? If you fall a little bit behind in 1st grade, it's kind of like the interest on your mortgage, on your home. It compounds, okay? En cambio, el niño que aprende 2 más 2 son 4, no tiene que volver a aprender a sumar una vez que haya adquirido el vocabulario en inglés, right? These skills, remember, it's in one brain. They transfer, okay? We also saw, and this is not very well understood, we do not know why this is the case. There's very little we know about the brain, I'm told, but we have seen the evidence that there are general cognitive advantages to bilingualism. And then finally, there's a reason that actually Pedro was mentioning before this talk got started. And I think this is incredibly important. In fact, to me, it's my favorite of these 3 reasons. When you respect the child, you respect their home language, that just goes such a long way, right? You're positioning the child as successful. And let me tell you what I mean by that. If you think about el niño Joaquín, ¿se acuerdan de Joaquín? When you put Joaquín in an all-English environment, right? Y el mensaje es, you need to learn English. El español que tú traes o la lengua, sea árabe, coreano, lo que sea, es un impedimento. It is a handicap. It is a problem. Es una barrera que tú tienes que superar para que tú puedas estar con los niños en el salón normal. And I know the teachers don't do this on purpose. And my bilingual education friends who are teachers agree with me on this. It is not, this is not something they say, most of them, to a child, okay? There are very caring, very loving, very wonderful teachers in those programs. The message is still the same. You need to leave that other stuff behind para que puedas avanzar, okay? That's the message that Joaquín gets. Now, imaginémonos a Joaquín en una situación donde el 50, 90% del día se imparte en español. Joaquín es el niño que sabe. You see what I'm saying? Joaquín es el rey. Joaquín es el niño que Julian, el blanquito, right? He turns to Joaquín para que le ayude. What did she say? No entendí nada, right? So I hope this makes sense. We are positioning Joaquín as a successful child. And when you position children as successful, it's much more likely for them to become successful. Okay, and I think the evidence bears this out. Now, my final point, because I know I have to end soon and get to your questions. What about their Spanish? Okay, I would love to be able to present to you data about all of the languages that are spoken here in the US. I've only got my work on Spanish, and it needs to be seen within the reality that 53% of grandchildren of Spanish-speaking immigrants do not speak it, right? La familia que vimos antes con la señora y la hija y la nieta, right? 53% of those nietos do not speak any Spanish, okay? This is something that dual language education can help stave off, empezar a frenar esta pérdida lingüística. So we have a study here in Chicago. It's one building, one school, okay? And cada grado tiene dos salones, right? El salón de inmersión dual y el salón de English only, okay? And you can see that the dual immersion schools have the percentages that you can see on your screen of how much Spanish is taught. The school is a typical public urban high school, okay? 84% of the children are what we call free or reduced lunch. Esto quiere decir que la familia tiene ingresos por debajo de un umbral determinado por el gobierno federal, right, de pobreza. Okay, so these are working class and struggling, right, families. Okay, 81% son latinos, muchos hablan español en casa. So what we did, we took, todos los niños hablan español en casa, que quede claro eso, todos. Pero algunos están in all English classes y otros están in the dual language program, donde el 80% del día se imparte en español. We measured their listening comprehension, okay? So, por ejemplo, María fue al parque y vio 3 gatos negros y un gato azul. ¿Cuántos gatos azules? Yo, María, no sé, algo así. And you can see that the children, the blue bar is the children que hablan, todos hablan español en casa. The blue bar are children who only study in English. Y como pueden ver, no les fue tan mal. I mean, porque hablan español en casa, escuchan español en casa, they can hear how many gatos azules hay, okay? But here, the children who are in dual language, pues naturalmente, como se esperaría, do much better, okay? And that difference was quite large. Then we moved on to reading, y como notan, mucho más bajo, porque si bien es cierto que estos niños hablan español en casa, saben lo que no están haciendo en casa, no están leyendo en español en casa. That's why this difference is so much bigger, okay? And if we compare the differences between the reading and the listening, right? Es aquí con el reading, con la lectura, que vemos la gran ventaja que tiene el estudiar en el programa de inmersión dual de 2 lenguas, okay? And writing, my friends, es la última frontera. Aquí vemos unas diferencias enormes, and I just want to show you a very quick example. So, these are children, de nuevo, hablan español en casa, estudian, they did preschool, kindergarten, and first grade, so están ahora en su tercer año de escolarización en solo inglés, right? Y les pedimos que describieran el dibujo, right? So el niño aquí a la izquierda writes, ellos son comiendo eggs, él está haciendo eso, que son chiquititos, tienen 6 años, okay? El niño a la derecha speak Spanish at home. A mí me habló en español. Sí, yo quiero jugar, because we said it was a juego, right? We didn't say, estamos llevando a cabo un estudio morfosintáctico del... No, we just said, ¿quieren jugar? Sí. And this was what the child wrote. Dad making eggs, the kid helped dad. Now, yo no puedo probarles, right, airtight that this child was incapable. How do you prove the absence of something, right? But this is what he wrote. So I have every sense that this child was really not capable of putting text. For 3 years, all he does when he writes, con su manito, es in English, and he could not do it in Spanish. Now, let's travel across the hall. So here's the plant, right? Here's my metaphor, right? That their Spanish is withering, okay? Go across the hall. These are their neighbors, son vecinos, okay? In the neighborhood. Pero estos niños, los papás lo pusieron en inmersión dual, and look at the difference. Los niños están limpiando y la mamá es tomando chocolate y él, y se le fue la onda aquí al niño. El papá está cociendo huevo. Perfecto no es, no lo tomaríamos por mexicanito, criado en México, right? But I think you would agree that it's much stronger than these children, okay? Y este niño acá, por Dios, están cocinando huevos y tomando jugo y no hay líneas suficientes para contener todo el español que quiere soltar este niño, right? And then look at this morfosintaxis, cocinándoles huevos. I mean, this is just fantastic. Now, por favor, no vayan a pensar que yo tomé los mejorcitos del salón dual y los peorcitos del salón de inglés para hacer, you know, to make my point. You saw the averages. I mean, the averages are what they are, okay? So this is a robust plant que se está regando, right? And the differences just got even more acute as they get older, porque ya para quinto grado tienen 10 años, they have been studying, you know, let's see, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth. They're in their 6th year of puro inglés, and you can just see they can't. They can't do it. Withered plant. Y los niños en dual, oh my God, mi actividad favorita, you can see more quantity and more quality, okay? So this is the robust plant. So esto es lo que yo les respondo a los papás, right? Que me dicen lo siguiente, me dicen, no, fíjese que nosotros en casa hablamos español y eso es suficiente. Eso es suficiente, me dicen, que en la escuela sea puro inglés. Y les digo lo siguiente, qué bien que les estén hablando español en casa. Por favor, sigan hablándoles español en casa, ¿ok? Pero cuando usted me dice que es suficiente, mi pregunta es esta, ¿suficiente para qué? ¿Para qué? Porque si usted quiere que su hijo escriba en español como este niño a la izquierda, pues adelante, póngalo en puro inglés. Pero si quiere que escriba como este aquí a la derecha, I mean, the choice is clear, right? But here's the key piece, it's the English. Y lo que yo encontré es un poco diferente, ¿ok? Lo que nosotros encontramos. If you remember, the Houston and the California y demás, the Barra María estaba mucho más alto, right? You remember their English was a lot stronger. Yo no encontré eso. I found it the same. Okay, so this means I can look these parents in the eye and say, your children's English will not suffer. Okay, I cannot say, mis datos muestran lo que mostraron los demás datos que su inglés va a ser. No, I can't do that, but I can say, your children's English will not suffer. Okay, and it could, in fact, be like in Houston y demás lugares where it was much, much higher. Okay, y by the way, mi güerito aquí, mi blanquito, he did absolutely the same in English as his compañeros que estudian solo inglés. And if you look at the Spanish, este es el niño que llegó sin hablar ni pío de español. Para quinto grado está leyendo Harry Potter y la piedra filosofal, and he's writing things like this. A mí me gusta ir al parque porque right? Okay, so again, a robust plan. I'm going to conclude with something that I think is important for parents, especially to know. And I think it's important as a professional point of ethics to mention this to parents. Oh, and I didn't translate this into English. Okay, dice, puede haber cortos periodos. There can be short periods of time during which it looks like the child's English acquisition is somewhat behind the English acquisition of their amiguitos who are in all English programs, okay? But you must wait that out because your child is doing something complex. Do not compare your kids when they are little, okay? Those monolingual kids are building a unicycle. Your kid is building a bicycle. Some kids do it just as quickly. Some kids need a little more time. Pero al final, tu hijo va a tener una bicicleta and they're going to go faster, okay? So I liken this to the Three Little Pigs. Todo el mundo conoce el cuento de los tres cerditos, right? El primero construye su casa de paja, se construye bien rápido, but is it strong? No, it's not very strong. So in my analogy, this is like the ESL program, the All English program. Okay. Second little pig builds the house out of, palos de madera, tarda un poco más, pero es más fuerte. This is like the bilingual, which isn't bilingual, okay? Where you had a little bit of Spanish there, vimos todos los datos que mostraron que they achieve a little bit better, okay? Entonces, si tú eres una mamá y tienes a tu hijo en el bilingüe, right, en la casa de palos, pero miras la casa del hijo de tu vecina, right, who's in all English, you might go, oh, ay, por Dios, pero el hijo de la vecina tiene sus paredes y su techo y el mío solo paredes tiene. I made a mistake, lo voy a sacar. No. Give your child time. Your child is building a stronger house. Okay. And then, of course, el último cerdito makes his house out of tabiques, right? Out of ladrillo. It's much, much stronger. It can take a little bit longer. Okay. So, la mamá que tiene su hijo aquí, mira al hijo de la comadre que tiene sus paredes, right? In the bilingual. Y la vecina de la comadre que tiene las paredes y el techo y dice, oh my God, pero ¿por qué le puse atención a esa maestra loca? I'm going to take my child out of here y lo voy a... Don't do it, porque cuando llegue el lobo, right? And I'm not quite sure, this is where my analogy falls apart. I don't know what the lobo represents here. Perhaps a low level of English, perhaps loss of that heritage language. It could be academic failure. We saw that in the California data, okay? Give your children time to construct these houses. Y, ojo, no todos los hijos need this extra time, but some of them do. So el consejo aquí es de no comparar a los niños demasiado chiquitos. Okay. And finally, there is a social justice piece that I think is extremely important. We know in this country that 1 out of 4 young people, 1 out of 4 is Latino, of Latino origin. Okay. We know that 1/3 of them live in poverty. Okay. And this is crushing. It's very difficult for a child to learn cuando tienen hambre, cuando no tienen casa, cuando hay violencia, or whatever, comes with poverty. It's very, very challenging. Okay. Les duele la muela. Like, how are they supposed to learn? Okay. Up to 1/3 of them start el colegio sin saber inglés, etcétera, etcétera. We have all these data. And then el último que pone aquí, 1 of 4 have at least one undocumented parent. Okay. Y viven con el terror, por lo menos at least during the last 4 years, de cuando vuelven del colegio, mamá o papá no está porque los han deportado. I mean, this is just an anxiety-ridden set of conditions. So I am not saying that dual language solves all of these problems. It is not a panacea. What I am saying, or what I'm suggesting, is that it is the best model that we have so far. Y estos niños se lo merecen todo lo mejor para apoyarlos y para try to address some of these societal problems, okay? I think it could improve both of the problems that we talked about earlier, right? It could slow down intergenerational language loss. It could get rid of this problem. I studied 3 years in high school and I don't remember anything. And maybe these people, no me dio tiempo de hablar de todos ellos, remember these are the people who are bullying and arresting and doing terrible things in public when others are speaking English. Aquí está el abogado, ¿se acuerdan? Abajo a la izquierda está el abogado que lanzó un discurso muy feo a las 2 señoras que hablaban español en la cafetería. Okay, what if ese señor hubiera estudiado en una escuela de inmersión dual, al lado de Joaquín, pidiéndole consejo a Joaquín? I like to think que de alguna manera inoculamos a la gente, los vacunamos, right? I mean, against some of this discourse, this nativist, English-only, jerk, racista, xenophobic discourse, okay? Possibly. So what we're going for here is strong bilingual language development, and I'm going to conclude with a video of a bunch of kids because everybody likes little kids, okay? This is the end of my talk.
Ego milau aglika que elinica. I am American. Y en inglés y español, I am American. Je parle français, anglais y español. I am American. 我讲中文和英文，I'm American. En English, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, I'm American. En Inglesnya, ena Amarinya, ena Ganawa. I'm American. मैं हिंदी और इंग्लिश बोलता हूँ. I am American. Man इंग्लिशी व फारसी हर्फ मिज़ानम. I am American. Я говорю по-английски и по-русски. I am American.
Junto falatio de English, I am American.
Vorbesc inglese, portuguese și românește. I'm American.
Anything English and Malayalam samsari kampetkum. I'm an American.
He's very American.
or Urdu bolti hu. I am American.
나는 영어와 한국말을 합니다. I am American.
Yes, Hosmem Hayeden, Yevanglen, and I am American. Mówię po angielsku i po polsku. I am American. Türkçe ve İngilizce konuşuyorum. I'm American. Mi मी मराठी आणि इंग्लिश बोलतो. I am American. Mahal ko hadla English ka iyo Somaliga. I am American. I am American.
I am American.
I am American.
I am American.
I am American.
I'm American. أنا بحكي إنجليزي وعربي and I'm American.
So this came in response to some negative discourse about, right, whether you could speak English or not, and speak other languages and still be American. Anyway, so what we're advocating for here is truly bilingual programs, both for heritage speakers and for second language learners, so that we can promote a more bilingual citizenry. I hope there are some things here that you find of interest for your context in the UK. So what I will do now is stop sharing my screen, and hopefully we have a little time for questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. As always, wonderful, really, really inspirational. And I must say, an exemplary use of code switching throughout. So,
I can't help it, I can't help it.
Muchísimas gracias. Tenemos varias preguntas. Por un lado tenemos manos levantadas y por otro tenemos preguntas en el chat. Okay, we have people raising their hands and we have questions in the chat. So just, to break the ice, let me read out loud this question for you. With parents being native speakers of different languages, such as Spanish and English, living in an English-speaking country, what do you think of the one parent, one language system? This is by Jovi Daniela Alvarez.
Right. I would advise you to take a look at the work of a scholar whose name I'm going to write here in the chat. Annick de Houwer has done a lot of research, and she has a new book out now, and it talks about one parent, one language. It talks about all kinds of different, right? What do we call that? Household language. There's a fancy word, Julio, and I'm forgetting it. Household language policy. I think my advice to people is always use the language, use the minority language as much as possible, Some of Annick's work shows OPOL, one parent, one language is more successful. My sense is, and she and I have talked about this, a lot of that research is in a European context, so that makes sense for you. Here in the United States, however, things are a little different. So what I always tell parents here is use the minoritized language as much as you can, absolutely as much as you can. To grow it, okay? I'm going back to my plant metaphor, right? Because once the child gets to school, English is coming, right? Y va a acabar con todo. And if you can get that other language as strong as you can before they get to school, it has a much better chance of surviving. So I would say, if you can, sure, one parent, one language is great, so that the child associates one parent with one language. Sometimes that's not feasible. But if you've got, in fact, in the United States, if you've got both parents who speak the minority language, I would say both of them, like make the home. I don't care if the kid doesn't speak any English when they get to school, like that's almost a good thing, right? So I'm kind of going all over the place when I'm answering your question. I guess it depends in part on what the abilities of the parents are and what your local context is. But I think the kernel of my advice would be, the nucleus is, use as much of the minority language as possible in the home.
Thank you very much, Kim. Annabelle very kindly writes in bilingual idiom, I'll read it in English, being realistic, what do you think can be done to change general attitudes in order to change language policies? I know it's a big question.
It's a huge question. Part of it, and there's no magic bullet answer, right? If there were, we would all sort of be doing it, right? These talks, the Cervantes is promoting a change in attitudes. You all now have a responsibility when you go out into the world to change these attitudes. If you suspect that you're hearing, seeing, witnessing, you read something that is in any way repressing, shaming, right? In any way bullying non-English languages, speak up, say something. Oh, that reminds me, I should have included in my slide. I found a great piece of graffiti somewhere in England. It had said, we speak English. And Julio, do you remember this? They crossed out English and they wrote all these other languages. Oh, I'm going to see if I can find it. If you see something, say something, as they say in the surveillance community. speak out, be an advocate for multilingualism. If you want to use a language with your children, do it. Try to interrupt that what we call that public white space, right? Public white Anglophone space. There are many things you can do. Write to school boards. If your school is not offering robust language programs for children, write to your school boards. Don't laugh. This is something I like to do. And it's not, you know, I'm not touting this as some marvelous form of activism or whatever, but sometimes I find myself in Chicago in a very, very white space. Do you know what I mean? Upper class, very, very white Anglophone space. Maybe I'm at a store or I'm on the street, whatever it is I'm doing, right? Sometimes I will grab my phone and there's nobody there. And I'll be like, no, pues sí, fíjate que, and I'll just interrupt that space with some Spanish. I have privilege. I have white privilege. I have all kinds of privilege. So if somebody wants to say something to me, they're going to regret it, okay? Many people of color and many people who are disempowered and disenfranchised in many ways do not feel that way. They se sienten callados. They feel silenced in public because if somebody says something to them, they don't feel, right, that they have the privilege to defend themselves. So I like to go out there sometimes and use that to, and again, that's just a silly little example, but you know, hacen falta muchas gotas para hacer un océano, para hacer el mar, right? So that's just some of the ways. I'm sure you all can think of many more powerful ways.
Absolutely, Kim. Andrea Nieto Boyosa raises the following question in Spanish, which I translate to you as we speak. Andrea teaches monolingual English children 10 minutes per day. Okay, she teaches them Spanish. And then the rest of the time, she speaks both English and Spanish. Would you recommend that she takes something specifically to the nursery in order to improve the teaching so that they learn some Spanish? Or should the expectation just be that they know some, you know, set phrases and words in Spanish?
Okay, if I'm understanding correctly, she is a nursery school teacher. If you ask me, I mean, you asked, okay? Here's my answer. Make it 103% in Spanish. That's my answer. Make it immersion, make it totally in Spanish. Naturally, the children are going to speak to you in English because they can't yet, and then you respond to them in Spanish. Make it a total immersion. That's what I would do. I get that you probably won't be permitted to do that, but if your question is this okay? Should I do more? My answer is going to be do as much as you can. Of course, you're going to have to explain to the parents, explain to your director, like, I'm guessing you can't single-handedly change this nursery into a Spanish immersion nursery, but I would maybe invite the parents for a talk, somewhat like this one, show them this video, maybe, I don't know, get them on board with the fact that your kid is going to have an advantage de por vida. And now is the time. You cannot give your children this gift later. You must give your children this gift now.
Absolutely, Kim. This reminds me of a famous meme, some brain, where it says the brain can be bilingual, but you are too old when you realize, right? That kind of thing. There is a question in the chat by Jael Heike, and I will read it literally. I manage an early years educational center where 90% of the children are EAL. You know, Spanish people are not very good with acronyms, so, you know, I have a justification for mispronouncing that. How realistic is it to provide programs of bilingualism when there are more than 7 languages in the same class? How realistic is that?
That is a very good question. And I get this a lot from very diverse cities like Los Angeles and Nueva York, etc. I don't have a facile answer for you, okay? I'll answer with two different data points, okay? Which again, will not form a complete answer for you. One data point is that I remember visiting a welcoming centers, okay, here in Chicago, also in Northern Italy, in Genoa. There was a school that had children from at least 7, probably more, different language groups. And what they did each week was have the children learn a phrase from the other child's language. Now, is that promoting strong heritage language development? No. What it is doing is teaching the children to appreciate each other's languages, okay? So that is something, okay? ideally, and I don't really, yo no tengo claro cómo funcionaría esto, but if you gave me enough money, I would, and got enough people on board, I think we could make it work. Why can't every child be in a dual language? If not a dual language building school, could we not have, I think we could solve this problem. I think we could have kids in a large enough school with the right teachers and the right intent and have every child study 50% of the day in their home language, at least up through 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th grade. And then they can go on to learn additional languages. Again, that's not going to help you in your center right now. Okay. But, and I know you're not saying this, I don't think that having multiple languages present is reason enough to say, no, pues no, this is never going to work. There's too many languages, right? I think we could make it work if we really wanted to find a way.
Wow, this is really fascinating. Kim, and Nuria Carmona asks whether you could recommend any books on the topic discussed. So maybe you can write that in the chat, Kim, if that's okay. There's also a comment by Chispa Cardiff, which I think is relevant, and I think it represents this reality, sometimes not easy, right? So I will read verbatim. For me, the difficulty is when there are 3 languages. My kids speak Welsh in school and with their dad, Spanish with me, English with everyone else. Their worst language is Spanish, and without me, they simply don't use it. Any reaction to that, Kim?
I would look at, again, Anik de Houwer's work speaks to this. I think 3, I'm not going to say it's the maximum, but, and Anik in her books has several anecdotes where you may not want to go beyond the 3, okay? And I know plenty of people who have, the dad speaks French, the mom speaks Spanish, and the school is in the United States in English, right? It can be done. Will one of the, so you've got like a tricycle, right? Is one of the wheels going to be larger than the others? Yes. And that's okay. That's okay. In fact, on a bicycle, the wheels are never exactly the same. So that's another myth that we need to let go of, okay? Sometimes we feel bad, ay, no, pero el español de mi hijo. Listen, do as much as you can to develop it as strongly as you can. Your child does not have to pass for un monolingüe in Welsh, y un monolingüe en español, y un monolingüe en inglés. No, because your child is not monolingual. Your child will never be monolingual. And that's a good thing, okay? So I'm just saying that. I don't know if you're beating yourself up or not. It doesn't sound like it, but I mean, some parents do. Okay, so get rid of that. You don't need that, right? What you need is to just do as much as you can, sin castigar, right? Sin burlarse. Hay familias que se burlan de cómo hablan español or whatever the language is de su hijo. That doesn't help, right? Do our best to promote it, pero insistir, eso sí, insistir. I'll conclude my pseudo response with an anecdote. At my university, we have, tons and tons and tons of languages. We are the largest public university in the city of Chicago. And the only city on the planet that has more Polish speakers than Chicago is Warsaw, okay? We have a lot of Poles in Chicago. And I understand you in the UK also have a lot of Poles. We have Polish Saturday schools. We have a very robust network of Polish Saturday schools. And the kids hate it. They don't want to go. But their parents make them go every Saturday to Polish Saturday school. And do you know what they say when they're at my university? They say, thank God. Thank God my parents made me go. I didn't want to go, but now I am bilingual, biliterate in Polish, right? So, los niños resisten. They just do. We have to be clever and find ways to try to promote it anyway, porque siempre lo agradecen. They're always grateful when they get older. So if I had a bag of tricks, magic tricks, I would give it to you, but I don't. You know your own children, you know your own context. So I guess my only non-advice is keep doing what you're doing, do it as well as you can, have faith. If you can get those kids to play con sus primos en España or wherever it is, it is so important. Those early years, hasta los 8, 9, 10 añitos, are so, so important. So si te presenta la oportunidad de llevarlos a España un verano a que jueguen con los primos, do it. Do it.
How about Zoom conversations on a weekly basis with the
There you go. There you go.
That can help as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When my kids were little, we used to go to Oaxaca every summer, and I put them in a summer camp. So basically, they have friends, amigos que no hablan nada de inglés. That's what they need. Exactly. Conmigo, they always answer me in English. Always. But con el amigo que no habla inglés, They don't have a choice and they want to talk to that person.
At the Instituto Cervantes, for instance, we have the cuentacuentos for the first steps for the younger ones.
That's wonderful.
Everything helps, right? Brick by brick.
Everything. Every little bit. Mira, cada gotita de agua sobre esa planta ayuda. Cada rayo de sol ayuda.
Every little helps. Excellent. Wonderful, Kim. Wonderful, everyone. Let's check if there are any last-minute questions. There are some comments for you, Kim, which I encourage you to look at on your own if you want to save the chat. It's always a good memory from these wonderful talks that you gave. Well, if there are no more questions, I think we could adjourn the meeting unless Pedro or the Instituto or Kim herself have something to say.
I only would like to thank again. Muchísimas gracias realmente y se percibe, ¿no? En el chat no nos vemos personalmente. Estamos todos muy, muy emocionados por la capacidad de comunicación y por lo interesantísima de la conferencia tan rica que has dado y que nos ha animado a seguir este camino que es el de la aceptación de todas las lenguas y de la realidad del bilingüismo como una riqueza para todos. Entonces, muchísimas gracias y creo que no podíamos haber empezado esta serie con un invitado mejor. Muchísimas gracias, Kim.
Muchas gracias a ustedes, Pedro, Julio y los demás por haberme invitado, por haber compartido este tiempo conmigo. Les felicito en el Cervantes, ¿no? Porque there are several Institutos Cervantes around the world that are, like I said earlier, promoting this kind of discourse, and I think that's absolutely necessary. So les felicito y les agradezco la oportunidad.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ti, Kim.
Have a good day, everybody. Cuídense mucho. Be safe.
Gracias, Julio, también. Muchísimas gracias.
Not at all.
Les esperamos a todos en la próxima.